Welcome back to Upside Down Data. We need to talk about whether or not Altseason is canceled. So today was terrible for altcoins. If we just look at total 2, which is the total crypto market cap excluding Bitcoin, we can see that we're down on the day 7%. And from the local high here, we're currently down about 14%. But of course, altcoins are not the only things that are dumping. We can just go ahead and take a look at the stock market. The S&P 500 fell by almost 3% today. The NASDAQ 3.6%, the Dow Jones 2.58%, and really just everything sold off today. The Russell 2000 dumped. We also saw bond yields rising, suggesting that people are dumping bonds as well. And even gold and silver also painted red days today. And then, of course, Bitcoin also sold off. So this is not an altcoin exclusive phenomenon. And it's really all in response to the Fed meeting and the press conference that happened today, where they basically said that they were going to be more cautious. They didn't see as many rate cuts in the next year as the market had been expecting or pricing in. So this is a very strong volatile reaction to that across all the markets. So this is not a crypto specific phenomenon, certainly not an altcoin specific one either. So though the news often can be the catalyst, what I want to talk about today is why this is actually totally expected based on what our models had been saying, and the fact that this is actually probably healthy. And this doesn't mean that the bull market or alt season necessarily need to be canceled or dead. They might just be on a temporary pause. So let's go ahead and get into it. So before I get into that, I wanted to mention that if you want to see live data from our models and for on-chain data for Bitcoin and a bunch of different altcoins, go over to our website, polaritydigital.io, link in the description. And if you sign up for our Polarity Digital Pro plan, you get access to all of that, our workbench analysis platform, and more. So the first thing I wanted to talk about was just some historical context here. So we talked about how we were down from the local high about 14%. If we just look at the last cycle, and what Total 2 did, again, this is all crypto minus Bitcoin in terms of the market cap. Just look at some of the numbers that we saw in terms of drawdowns in Total 2 in the last cycle. Almost 30% here. Same thing here, almost 30%, 27%, 33%, 26%, 35, 20, 32, and then of course the massive 60% drawdown from spring going into the summer. And then also here's another one, 30%. So we haven't seen anything yet. If the last cycle is any guide, the drawdowns that we've seen so far, at least in this leg up, are nothing compared to what we have seen before. And so even if we fell notably lower here on Total 2, it would still be in total alignment with what we've seen in past cycles and not something to be especially worried about. Again, if we just go back and look at this, when you look at this, I'm just going to get rid of these drawings here. You just see a big, beautiful parabolic move. You kind of gloss over, your eyes gloss over those massive drawdowns, but they happened and they felt very scary at the time. So this one that's already smaller, hasn't even gotten as large as those, already feels scary, but this is normal. This just happens in bull markets. So something else I also want to talk about is Bitcoin dominance. So one of the things that people often look for to say that alt season is happening is this massive drop in Bitcoin dominance. Bitcoin dominance is the percentage of the total crypto market cap that is accounted for by Bitcoin. And so when this drops hard, it means that Bitcoin is underperforming or losing ground to the rest of the market, aka altcoins. Now, when people saw this, they said, all right, here's alt season. It's just going to go crazy. Alts are going to go crazy. This is it. But now we're seeing this rebound on Bitcoin dominance moving back up. And so what that's suggesting is that Bitcoin is now outperforming altcoins. And this is not unusual. This is the most important thing I want to talk about here. This has actually happened every single cycle. Look at this back here in 2020 going into 2021. That massive bull run that Bitcoin kicked off and then altcoins really followed up. You'll see this big explosion in Bitcoin dominance as Bitcoin started really moving. Then it fell, like what we just saw. We go back over here. It fell just like we saw there, and then went back up where Bitcoin then pushed to basically its cycle top more or less. Even back in the 2017 cycle, same thing, a massive drop in Bitcoin dominance, but then a big reversal as Bitcoin went in and put its cycle top in. And then it collapsed in that final big alt season that followed. So this has happened every single cycle. You see Bitcoin start us off. You then get a kind of mini alt season that happens part of the way through, and then a reversion on Bitcoin dominance as Bitcoin takes back over. And so this is not anything unusual from what we've seen in the past, is what I'm trying to say here. That Bitcoin, though it's corrected, maybe it will now regain its driver's seat. It will then go push off to some ultimate cycle top, and then alt season will really commence after that. This could have just been the first inning of alt season, which will then commence after that final push has been made. So far, we are not deviating from historical precedent at all. So those are just some historical context pieces I wanted to talk about that also would point to the fact that it's way too early to say that alt season is canceled. Now I want to talk about our models and why they were also suggesting that a sizable pullback from alts was very much a possibility based on where we were. So let's talk about our risk models. And so these are our upside downside potential indicators, UDPI for short. They're risk models. High values mean high risk, low values mean low risk. And so if we just look across a number of different altcoins, I'm showing you here Chainlink first of all, you'll see that risk had gotten very high on Link, and then right on Q, Link is now correcting along with the rest of the market. We saw it with ADA, Cardano, same thing. Risk get very elevated, now we're correcting. Saw this with XRP. Risk gets very elevated, now we're correcting. And in fact, what we can do with our workbench that we have over here at polaritydigital.io, our website, link in the description, is we can actually go to our workbench and we can actually just take an average of the UDPIs, so the risk models, for a bunch of different altcoins, all the large cap altcoins. There are a whole bunch of them here. Well, you can see, so I've overlaid this on top of the Solana price chart, but this is really the average across all of these. But you can see that in these really hot points in the market, so March 2021, that was when alts were very hot. See, this gets very high up here. Same thing with September and October, November of 2021. Same thing, got very hot. This gets very hot as well, this aggregate. Then really low in the bear market, and then starts getting high again during these alt seasons that we've seen so far in this cycle. And what I really want to point attention to is how hot it is right now. That this is an incredibly hot level for this average to be at, historically speaking. So to see some kind of correction here is quite expected. This is not surprising at all if we just know how this tends to play out over the cycles. So therefore, what I really am looking at here is that total 2 is correcting. It has more room that is very plausible for it to correct here to be in line with history, but this is normal. This is normal. This is expected based on where risk was. We might just need time to cool off, but Bitcoin regained the driver's seat as it always tends to do in the cycle after that big first drop in Bitcoin dominance, regain its footing, go off, make a big run, generate an even hotter ball of money around it, which then can ultimately flow into altcoins for their true alt season that will take us down to these lower Bitcoin dominance levels that we've seen at the end of each past alt season. So that's what I'm seeing here. So obviously not financial advice. You should make of these data as you will and navigate the market the way that you see is best. But I do just think when you look at historical context and where we were, a correction here makes a lot of sense. And it doesn't mean that alt season has to be over just yet. Certainly we're not at the beginning. We already saw the first starting signs of it, but it does seem quite plausible that we'll have another leg of it at some point. And I think early next year is going to be really where we look. Early next year into spring of next year, somewhere in that ballpark would be where I'd be looking at for that to happen. We'll know a lot more come even just February of next year, most likely, how things are going to play out. All right, if you like the content, remember to subscribe to the channel, give the video a like, and follow us over on X. A lot of updates for our models and more over there. And you can go to our website, polaritydigital.io, to see live data from our models and more.